Palm Beach County Jane Doe. The Palm Beach County Jane Doe was found in Florida in 1993 on a wildlife refuge. It was located in West Palm Beach. Her body was skeletonized and she had lost her life more than a year before. Her cause of death could not be determined. She was believed to have been between the ages of 16 and 20, but they knew very little more than this. She had some sort of abnormality in her spine and she wore men's pants. As a result of her spinal problems, she had to wear a larger left boot, which was found with her body. There was a hope that these smaller, significant details would lead to her identification, but it didn't happen. Nowadays, with better databases, maybe it would. Especially in this case because, unlike many of our does, Trebble Anita Garrett was reported missing. She was a runaway from Easley, South Carolina, and she was last seen by her family in September of 1988. Little is known of her life, but she was clearly loved and was missed by her family. There are multiple references to her being pregnant when she went missing, but there's no indication that she was found pregnant when discovered. I'm not sure how far along she was or if the baby made it. Her remains were skeletonized and possibly disturbed by animals. It's also not clear how much of a gap between when she ran away and when she was murdered. It's impossible not to wonder if there was a baby or whether or not the baby survived. But unfortunately, that's not a question I can answer. On the positive side, however, I can say that in November of 2020, Trebble found her name. The authorities believe she got to Florida on her own. If anyone has any information on her movements at this time, please call the number on your screen. The only possible way that the police will be able to find who killed her is to have more information on how she got to Florida and what her movements were when she arrived. Miss Molly Doe, also known as Salina, Kansas Jane Doe. On the afternoon of January 25, 1986, a victim was found on the north side of a bridge, on the westbound lane of I-70 near Salina, Kansas. The victim had been savagely beaten, suffering a black eye and abrasions. She was tossed off the bridge into a shallow creek. Perhaps the saddest part of this story is that she was alive when she went over. She drowned in the shallow creek below. Authorities noted she didn't appear to be homeless. In fact, she was well groomed. She had expensive clothes, expensive dental work, and acrylic nails. Her clothes had been manufactured in France and were sold only in the U.S. in large cities like New York or perhaps Los Angeles. She was around 25 to 30 years old and 5 foot 5 inches tall. She had an appendix scar and stretch marks, which led them to believe she had a child in the past. Because she was someone who would likely be missed, it was believed that they would find her name easily. But this didn't happen. It's important to note that in 1986, it was not a streamlined process, especially when people were in different jurisdictions throughout the United States. It would eventually turn out that she was not supposed to be in Kansas at all, so it was one of the last places anyone would look. Eventually, Miss Molly was unceremoniously buried in an unmarked grave, and adding insult to injury, her killer also went free. In late 2019, they had decided to exhume Miss Molly and try again to identify her. DNA samples were submitted and there was a hit this time in CODIS. Miss Molly was, in fact, Robin Green from California. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension immediately called, and with this, a daughter found out that her mother had passed away all those years before. It would come out later the identification only happened because the daughter got around a loophole. This just shows how the system is broken regarding the identification of these lost people. Lucky for them, they made it. Robin Green was from Los Angeles, California. She had traveled from LA to Minnesota to visit her children as they lived with their father. However, somewhere along the return home to LA, she disappeared. Oddly, she was never reported missing, but her family had her declared legally dead at some point. It's unclear how, but despite not being reported missing, there was some sort of investigation into her disappearance. In the end, it would turn out it's not just one child missing their mom, it was 4 kids, and they had no idea what happened to her. She was 28 when she took her trip to Minnesota in December of 1985. That means she was still alive a month later when she went into the water at the end of January 1986. This would be in the middle leg of her trip back home. No one is quite sure why she was in Kansas at the time, although it was feasibly on her path home. 2 of her kids spoke out to the press. Her daughter Sarah said at the time The last time she saw her mom was her 4th birthday. She has limited memories because of her age. Her sister Erin, however, was 6 when their mom went missing. They both reported that their mom would visit them as much as possible and call them all of the time. So she had been with them that last Christmas, and then radio silence. They reported the visit as going fine. Everything seemed normal. There was eventually an investigation into her disappearance, and this did list her husband Michael Green as a person of interest. He was dubbed by some as the Acid King of California. Eventually, Michael would plead guilty to selling LSD between 1968 and 1974. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for this, as well as drug smuggling in San Diego, California. The home he lived in with Robin was eventually seized. The family thinks it's possible that Michael's past had something to do with Robin's disappearance. In fact, he was actively involved in a drug case when she disappeared. Sarah said that she always assumed her mom was probably dead, but it felt like a gut punch to find out it was true. The search for their mom was frustrating. By the time the girls were in their 20s, they started trying to find her themselves. They had no idea that their mother was never officially reported missing, and this was a big factor in not being identified. About 10 years after she disappeared, her ex-husband consulted with his lawyer and decided to have her declared legally dead. After all, her social security number had not been used in all that time, and their father was hoping to get survivor benefits for the 4 kids. This inadvertently, however, closed a lot of doors as far as police agencies being willing to look for her. As a result, the girls found themselves being sent from agency to agency, with no one willing to help them. As a result of that declaration, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System's website refused to include her as missing. It took an actual legal loophole to be allowed to submit her DNA to CODIS. If not for that loophole, Miss Molly would still be unidentified. Personally, I find that inexcusable. The only reason they allowed her to submit her DNA to CODIS was that there were 5 women that the state was trying to identify. It would turn out she wasn't a Minnesota Jane Doe. She was instead a Jane Doe from another state. But luckily, this meant her DNA was in the system when they decided to run Miss Molly again. It would take 3 years, but there was a match 600 miles away. Her daughters have said they've never been able to find out why their mom was in Kansas. She did disclose something interesting, though. She said that it was possible Robin and Michael were driving through Kansas on their way from Minnesota to their home in Los Angeles. This is the only reference I found where it alludes to her husband being with her on that trip. To me, this is a game changer, because that means he would have to have known what happened to her, or at least that she'd disappeared. It also makes it even more odd that he never reported her missing. This knowledge, however, went with him to the grave. If he was responsible for her death, he never paid for it. The Salina County Sheriff said Michael Green has not been ruled out as a suspect in the case, but he passed away in September 2007 in Florida. Robin Green went unidentified for 34 years. The Bushkill Township, Northampton County, Jane Doe. In October 1987, the body of a female was found in the brush on the side of the road in Bushkill Township, Northampton County, Pennsylvania. They believed her to be 35 to 55, of Caucasian descent, with blue eyes and blonde hair. She was wearing a red shirt with a decal of a woman's face, a multicolored bracelet, jeans, and thermal long john underwear with a snowflake design. It is believed that she died of natural causes, likely a heart attack, but she had suffered many lacerations to her face prior to this. She died about a day before she was found. It's not clear, but it seems to indicate that they believe she was walking along the road and hitchhiking when she suffered a heart attack, perhaps hurting herself as she collapsed. In June of 2020, she got her name back. The Bushkill Jane Doe is now Donna K. Griffen of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It turns out she was just 37 when she passed away on a road in Plainfield Township. No one in her home in Philadelphia or her extended family in Georgia reported her missing. Eventually, she was identified through genealogical records, and her family stated that they had no idea where she was. This included one child. The authorities learned she had moved to Philly in the 1970s, about the time the family in Georgia lost contact. During her travel, she used the aliases of Linton and Shelby for last names, which helped with the confusion of her real identity. The police believe she may have been hitchhiking, getting frequent rides with truckers. They based this on where the sunburn was located on half of her body. Investigators were able to identify Donna with the help from Virginia-based Bode Technology, which provided DNA analysis and assisted the FBI in finding her child. With the information discovered, authorities are now hoping to reopen the cold case. They appear to be reevaluating whether or not foul play may have played a part in her death. If you have any information at all about this case, please call the number on your screen. The Royal Palm Beach, Florida John Doe. A white male was found who was believed to be 25 to 45 years old. He was murdered by a blow to the head. He had long brown hair, one leg shorter than the other, and was wearing a t-shirt that said Rolled Kill Cafe. You kill it, we grill it. His cause of death is listed as bleeding. His remains were skeletal by the time they were found, and they believed he had died the month prior. He was identified on May 11, 2020, as Wayne Calvin Griffith, age 43. He disappeared on October 1, 1993, from Ohio. His body was found in the Royal Palm Beach, Florida, on October 25, 1993. Wayne was reported missing on October 1, 1993. He was in the process of traveling to Melbourne, Florida, when he disappeared. The vehicle that he was driving at the time has never been recovered. His case was closed thanks to a tip called in on February of 2019, which prompted investigators to obtain DNA from one of his relatives. It was officially determined in May of 2020 that he was, in fact, Wayne Calvin Griffith. Wayne Calvin Griffith went unidentified for 26 years. Corona Girl. The young woman who had long been known by the nickname of Corona Girl was found on September 25, 1989, on the west side of Interstate 35 at exit 277 in Jarrell, Texas. She had been deceased for about 2 weeks when she was found. She was wearing the Corona Beer promotional t-shirt seen here. She had made her t-shirt look unique by carefully shredding it, and there was some hope that someone would recognize her by the shirt. It didn't happen. She was young, probably in her late teens, around 5'1" or 5'2", slim with short brown hair. The sheriff refused to give up, and as technology improved for reconstruction photos, they released new sketches, but still nothing. Then the DNA Doe project once again gave someone their name back. In fact, this is the case I was mentioning regarding Princess Blue's identification. Princess Blue was also a Texas Jane Doe. It goes to show just how important DNA is, as it was a complete surprise in the other case that the DNA matched Princess Blue. They believed it would match Corona Girl. This left Corona Girl still needing to be solved. It was the DNA Doe project who solved this riddle, well, both of the riddles actually. So it was with this that it was discovered that Corona Girl in life was Sue Ann Huskey, and she was just 17 when her life was taken in 1989. It took 30 years, but Sue Ann Huskey would soon be buried with her real name. Her sister Michelle Barnard would go on to say, "It's hard to understand and accept. It's shocking. They had no idea where she was until they got the call the day after Christmas. They have no idea how she even got to Williamson County. She was a bubbly young girl with no history of running away. A good kid. It's a complete mystery how she ended up where she was found." Sue Ann's sister Delaney said her sister was last seen in Sulphur Springs in 1989, and her absence has haunted the family since. Amanda Cantrell, another of Sue Ann's sisters, said this at a press conference. "They have given us our sister back, and now we can take her home. And after 30 years of not knowing where she was or how she was, you always have it in your heart and on your mind wondering, where are you at, sister? We lost our father in 2002. He grieved over his baby girl, not knowing where she was. But we are very grateful that we have our mother still with us, and she was able to find her baby girl and bring her home." And just like that, thanks to the DNA Doe project, she is again Sue Ann. But while that solves the mystery of Corona Girl's identity, detectives are now searching for her killer. If you have any information at all about Sue Ann's movements or anything about this case, please contact the sheriff's office at the number on your screen. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button. Take care of yourselves and each other.